Strange Brew Podcast, Season 1, Episode 338. I don't know if you're happy about it or not happy about it, but we have baseball to talk about. So that is exciting. The Brewers kind of make the move that we inevitably thought they would make with Freddy Peralta, 1 year left on his deal, coming off of a career year. We know what the Brewers do more often than not in these situations. You sell high, and you trade a guy that had a great year, and you get prospects back because you're not going to be able to pay him his next contract. And that's what they did. They send Peralta and Myers to New York, and they get back two high-level prospects, two really good blue-chip prospects. But your reaction to this trade depends almost entirely on how you feel about a league without a salary cap and how you feel about Mark Attanasio and Matt Arnold and the way they navigate a league without a salary cap as a small market team. We will go over all of that. We may start with some baseball today. But we also have championship weekend in the NFL. We will discuss that. It is on Sunday, 2 o'clock AFC title game, 5:30 NFC title game. We're not going to have any picks today. I just don't have a read on these. We went over 2 last week. I don't have a good read on a backup quarterback for Denver, and that Rams-Seahawks game just feels like a pure toss-up to me with the way those two teams played each other earlier in the year. We will discuss a little bit of that. Packers are making some headway in terms of interviews for the new defensive coordinator position. I don't remember if on Monday's podcast we had the news that Hafley was gone yet or not. I think we did. But Hafley becomes the head coach in Miami, and now the Packers are on the search for the next defensive coordinator. There are some names I like. I think there's one name we're all waiting on to see if they're going to interview, a man with a Wisconsin tie or two or tree. But we'll talk about that as well. Let's go.
On the ground, a chance here. Durham to Hardy to first. In time! Yes! The Brewers win! Yes!
Here comes Melvin to the 25, to the 20, Gordon 15, 10, 5, touchdown! Wisconsin! Record-breaking run!
Morgan, a smash up the middle, base hit to center. Here comes Gomez, around third, a throw, and the Brewers win!
Here's the snap. He looks, he throws, and and there is your Super Bowl dagger!
Booker the drive, gets inside, leads in, knocked away and stolen by Holiday. Phoenix has to foul, on a pinnacle ball, throws it down.
Swinging fly ball in the right center. Broxton is there, and they're the champions. They have done it.
It's been a 50-year journey. Wisconsin, we've got a room at the top of the world tonight. The Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions.
Now, welcome in. It is butt cold. It is colder than a witch's titty. It's colder. Whatever euphemism you want to put on it. This is about as bad as it's been in a long time. Schools canceled all over the state. In Sheboygan, we had people jumping into Facebook comment sections on all of the stories about school being closed to talk about how we never got a day off for a cold. We walked 2 miles each way. I lost a toe. I had frostbite on my 2 toes. I lost a pinky toe, but I got to school. It always amuses me how that always happens. We had some cold days, I think. Not a lot, but I'm pretty sure when I was a kid, we had a handful. We were talking about this morning, or right now it's 13 below. When we got on the air this morning, it was 16 below. The trivia question for the trivia segment this morning was, what is the coldest temperature in Sheboygan County history? And the coldest temperature is 26 below. It happened twice, once in the early 80s, once in the mid-80s. But then in the mid-90s, it was 25 below 2 times, back-to-back days early February. Now, I am not somebody who has a great weather memory. There are some people out there that remember, oh, yeah, the winter storm on 91. I remember my wife and I were getting a divorce. And, it's just they remember everything about that day when 15 inches of snow got dumped or whatever. The only one I remember from Sheboygan growing up was the flood of 98, but I couldn't even tell you when that happened. June, July. I know it was summer. June, July, August, maybe July. That's really the only weather memory I have, but a lot of people have that kind of a memory of the massive storms or a tornado obviously going through the area. I think I'd remember that one. But for winter weather, for really cold days or snowstorm days, the winter storm of 99, I don't know. I don't remember any of that kind of stuff. But, of course, when you get to cold weather days and school being canceled for cold weather, you can almost hear the knuckles cracking of the people, a generation of my generation or a generation older than mine, getting set to hop into comment sections and tell everybody how we never had cold days. This generation's soft. Well, that is how bad the cold weather is in our area here today. Yeah, I came in, I think it was 16 or 17 below at the Sheboygan Airport with a wind chill of 43 below. Hasn't gotten a lot better. 13 below. I really don't know if my car is going to start. It lives in a garage normally. It lives the cake eater life in a garage. And it fired up fine. I think it was 40 degrees still in the garage. But I don't know now. Sitting outside for 6 or 7 hours. I don't know if this puppy's going to crank, but we will find out. This may have to be a little bit of a prorated podcast, too, just because I have an appointment I've got to get to. I came home yesterday, and I said to myself, which we all know is a cardinal sin, I finally had a day today that was supposed to be a nothing day, just work and that's it. And otherwise, we've got the curling schedules. I'm calling basketball games as a side hustle. I've been doing that for like 15 years. My wife is working extra hours on weekends, helping out at the hospital. There's a lot of stuff going on. We haven't watched a show together, I think, in 2 weeks. I mean, there's just been a lot of things going on. So I thought to myself when I got home yesterday afternoon, I thought, John, you son of a bitch, you made it. You've got a day on Friday where you've got nothing but work, and you get home and you're good. I've got a doubleheader basketball game to call on Saturday, but whatever. Friday, you get home, maybe a jet a little bit early on a cold day, and you've got nothing going on the entire afternoon and night. Couple of cocktails, watch a show, watch the Bucks game, I guess. I put myself through that. So I said that to myself. I was doing some dishes, and I shut the water off, and all of a sudden I hear underneath the sink a proop, 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 proop. And I think, that can't be good. This isn't, I don't even want to look. I just want to move on with my day, but I have to look. And there is water on the garbage disposal side of the sink, not on the other side. Seems to be okay on the other side, but if you're running water on the garbage disposal side of the sink, water is running straight through any crevice in the bottom of that garbage disposal. It's just going right through. Is it a Clarkman?
It's a misprint. What do you got, a Clarkman?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll call you back. I'll talk you through it.
I don't think Putty's going to come and fix it today. But then I thought, all right, so we got to make a schedule with the plumber. And, of course, the first time they had tomorrow or today was, we got a time at 8 o'clock in the morning. Who the hell is home at 8 o'clock in the morning? I guess other people work different schedules. But I like when you have to call to get something repaired or whatever. And it's always, that's one of the first times, we're going to be there at 8 in the morning on a work day? All right. So I take a vacation day? But I do work a weird schedule, so I do have off or downtime in the afternoon. So they gave me an 11 to 3 window this afternoon to come and get that fixed. And I told them I'm not home till noon most days. They said they'd make a note of that, so I am anticipating a call at 10:45. Because I said, the lady I talked to said, we can give you an 11 to 3 window, and I'll make a note that says you're not home until noon. So you're going to get a confirmation that says 11 to 3, but it's not 11 to 3. I'm making a note. A note has been made that you won't be home until noon. So I am anticipating a call at 10:45 saying we're in your driveway. we need to get in here. So I need to get home and deal with that. I'm actually kind of surprised. I am happy. I know I'm kind of poking fun at him, but I am happy that in that short amount of time, somebody was able to come out and look at it. I'm sure I'll have to pay an exorbitant price to walk in the door and fix whatever this is. My guess is I'm installing, or somebody else will be installing, a new garbage disposal today for me. Even if there's a different fix, that'll be the suggested fix. But I am happy they're coming with that short of turnaround, and they're going to get this thing rectified. But, yeah, I was surprised that they are even out working with how cold the weather is. A lot of businesses shut down. I am appreciative of that. Yeah, it is a bitterly cold day. And watch out for exploding trees today, too, please, God. Watch out for exploding trees. Well, that story really took off. We talked about that on the B Morning Show on Thursday. There was that one guy on Twitter, I forget his name, Max Velocity. He's like a weather guy. I don't even know if he's from this region. He must be. And he put a map up of most of the state of Wisconsin covered in an exploding tree risk. So I'm scrolling through Twitter, and I happen upon exploding tree risk. That catches my eye. What now? It's going to be so cold that trees are just going to start exploding like it's a Michael Bay movie. And that's not what it is, but I've just never heard of it termed that way. But when you see a graphic like that, so of course we talk about that on the morning show. I think all of our stations talked about it on the morning show. And then everybody was sharing that graphic. McAfee talked about it on his show. Exploding trees, so hot right now. Exploding trees. So I guess what happens is it gets so cold that the sap inside the trees expands. And it just kind of sounds like a crack or a gunshot or something like that. But the tree isn't actually just exploding. It's not offing itself. The weather's going to be so cold, the trees are just saying, peace out. I'm done. But it's not like that. But that is a much funnier interpretation of it. Like I said, I think we wrote in the blog, I did have that vision of a Michael Bay explosion happening, like a late 90s Michael Bay disaster movie. Trees just exploding all over the place, shards of bark in people's eyes. But it's just the cracking of the sap in the trees. But that took over. Like, that's a story that just took over every medium, every format, sports, country stations, news talk station, anything. TV, radio, TikTok video. I mean, everybody was talking about exploding trees. So watch out for those today, too, if you're out and about. But yeah, got to get home and get that garbage disposal rectified. So, and they'll know. They'll know the second they walk in that I don't know. I don't know anything about it. I Googled it. I don't know anything about it. So please feel free to take advantage of me and price gouge me. Please and thank you. So I have to get down there and get back home because I am anticipating a call prior to when I'm actually there or supposed to be there. So let's hop into it. Let's talk first about baseball, shall we? Let's talk a little baseball. First of all, a few things before the trade. I wasn't surprised by this, but just as a note, Hall of Fame voting happened this week. So all of the snobby baseball writers, and I am technically a member now of the Baseball Writers Guild or whatever it is. I think that's not what it's called, but Baseball Writers of America. I am a part of that. So I don't know if at some point I would get a Hall of Fame vote. I don't know if it's a randomized thing or it's the amount of work you put in or national articles you have. I'm sure there's some kind of criteria, right? Maybe not, to get a Hall of Fame vote. Could you imagine if I got a Hall of Fame vote? Anyway, they were voting on that. I think Carlos Beltran got in and one other guy, I forget who. And Ryan Braun was on the ballot. So Ryan Braun got less than 5% of the vote. Not stunning. And that means he will not be on the ballot going forward. So that was his kind of one shot to stay on it moving forward. I think you have to get obviously better than 5%. And then the line, I think, changes every time you're up. You got to get a little more and a little more and a little more to keep yourself on the ballot. But he was under 5%, so he will no longer be on the ballot. I don't think that he had, even if you take the steroid, the what did they call it with the urine sample? There's a phrase for what he had because the guy who took it kept it in his house overnight, and then he brought it in to get it tested. Procedure, something like that. There was something like that where they blamed the faulty or a bad urine sample that tested positive for PEDs or whatever it was. We don't even know what it was ultimately, right? I don't even know what specifically it was. But there was something about that, and then I think even if you take that out of the story, I don't know that his numbers match up his Hall of Fame numbers. He has less than 2,000 hits, only a couple less than 2,000 hits, so he's not in the 3,000 hit club, obviously. He's got 300-plus home runs. He would be, I think if you took the off-the-field stuff out of it, you took that story out of it, I think he would be in the Hall of Good. I don't even know that he'd be in the Hall of Very Good. Look, he was an excellent player. And for my generation, he's my generation's Robin Yount. Maybe I was a little bit older, but he is my generation's Yount. And nobody was more clutch. In fact, I think to this day, I would still take Ryan Braun if it were Game 7 of the NLCS and you needed a hit. I think I still take present-day Ryan Braun over some of the guys on this roster because he just had it. Like Caleb Williams has it for the Bears. He's bad for a lot of the game, but he knows when the lights are the brightest late in the game, he seems to be able to Houdini and to make plays. Brawny had that. He had that ability to come up clutch in big situations. That was something that defined his entire career in Milwaukee. But even with that, the numbers are good. And maybe you could make a case for the Hall of Very Good, but he was never going to be a Hall of Fame. It would have been fun if he could have stayed on the ballot for a few more years, but given that the numbers weren't extraordinary, and then when you factor in the off-the-field stuff and how he denied the bad urine sample, he dragged that guy under the bus, and then later it was found out that none of that was against the rules, and he did test positive, and he had no more excuses. He got the MVP that year, but that is tainted. So even if you take that out of it, I don't think he had ever had a chance. But that was this week. Brewers also announced they are bringing back or honoring a couple of new people on the Wall of Honor this summer. CC Sabathia. I don't think we have a date on it, but that's going to be a big night at American Family Field, bringing back CC. Going to get a huge standing ovation. I think he might pitch a couple innings. Get him in there. Get him in there for an inning or two. And he'll go on the Wall of Honor. And then the late Dave Parker, who is a Hall of Famer, and spent his last year in Milwaukee, which was actually a good year. He was 39 years old, and he had already solidified. He'd won rings in Pittsburgh. He had already solidified a Hall of Fame career, but just wanted to play one more year. And then it turned out to be a really good year. He had like a 21 home run, 80-run driven-in year where he hit 280 or 285, something like that on a bad Brewer team. But he has since passed, but he'll be going into. So Dave Parker and CC Sabathia joining the Wall of Honor. Now, the bigger story this week, Fastball Freddy. He is on his way to New York. David Stearns, the guy who got him when he was 19 years old in an Adam Lind trade. Remember Adam Lind? First baseman of some repute. Did he play 1 year? Adam Lind stats. He either played 1 year or 2 years in Milwaukee, and he's just a part of that cavalcade of guys that they tried to replace Prince with. He wasn't bad. 1 year in Milwaukee, 2015, which was an abysmal year. Yeah, he had a good year. This is actually our second best year in terms of WAR in his career. He hit .277 with 20 home runs and 87 driven in. That's pretty damn good. Slugged .460 at an OPS of .820. I'd take that right now. But they traded Lind that offseason for 3 19-year-old prospects, or a couple 18-year-old prospects and a 19-year-old prospect named Freddy Peralta. And as is the case with trades like that, if you're trading a big-ish name or a solid name in this case for 3 very young prospects, you're kind of just hoping that one of them works out. And that's exactly what happened. The other 2 guys are in the wind. And Freddie worked out, and he burst onto the scene in 2018. What a magical year that was. His Mother's Day debut in Colorado. He was mowing guys down in the thin air, had 13 strikeouts in 5 innings in his debut, and we all were saying to ourselves, okay, we have something here. And we did have something there. 2018, then he made a few starts. He pitched out of the bullpen in the playoffs that year, 6-4 record, a 4.25 ERA. The roughest year he had was the following year because they tried to start him to begin the year. He wasn't quite ready for that. Then they moved him to the pen. Then they moved him back in the rotation. Snip, snap, snip, snap, snip, snap. And he ends up with a 7-3 record, but a 5.29 ERA. And then we're not quite sure. He struck out a bunch of guys, so he still had that. But we're not quite sure. He had a solid rookie year. Then he had that bump in the road. And Corbin had a bad year that year in 2019, too, coming off of bullpen work in 2018. Woodruff, of those 3 guys that would form that triumvirate for a while, Woodruff was the only one who was just consistently good or on the rise the entire time. And then the pandemic year was the year that he came into his own. He only made 1 start. He made 15 appearances, all out of the pen outside of 1 start. But he goes 3-1, has a 3.99 ERA, 47 strikeouts in 29 innings. Finally seemed to be under control and in control of his stuff. And that was the year. After that year, they gave him the contract that he is still working on right now, a 6-year deal worth $28 or $30 million. We talk about these kind of deals often for small market teams where players are under your control for 7 years at built-in prices for the first 4 years, and then you can negotiate, and this is that whole arbitration thing where they might be going to an arbitration trial with William Contreras here. You negotiate then years 5, 6, and 7 depending on your performance. And they sometimes, if you identify a player in your system that you feel really good about that's going to be good for that whole window, sometimes you'll offer them a deal like they gave Freddie, a 6-year deal for $30 million. It is club-friendly if he ends up being good, which he was. And for him, it's guaranteed money, whereas instead of making $500,000 that third year in the league, he made $2.5 million. So you get some guaranteed money, more than you would, and that gives that player some stability. And then you also buy out some of those arbitration years later, and it's coming in at a fixed price, which is helpful for the club. They did that with Ryan Braun. They gave him an 8-year, $45 million deal at one point. They did it with Aaron Ashby. I guess we'll kind of see. It feels like that's trending in the right direction, but they did that with him as well. And that's the deal that Peralta's been working on. Then in 2021, he was tremendous as a part of that 3-headed monster of Woodruff, Burns, and Peralta. 10-5 record, a 2.81 ERA. And 195 strikeouts. Now, we didn't see that version of Fred again until this past year. He was injured in 2022 a lot, went 4-4, 3.58. 2023, that was the year, remember, was that the last year of Burns? That was the last year of Burns. 12-10 record, a 3.86 ERA. And then 2024, when we had started doing the podcast, we said going into that year, Woodruff was hurt, we knew that. Burns was gone, they had traded him. And remember we said, we need 2021 Freddie. He has to be a top-of-the-rotation guy. He was pretty good last year, or in 2024, 2 years ago. But he wasn't to that 2021 level, 11-9 record, a 3.68 ERA, 200 strikeouts, a really nice year. Last year, 2025, that's where he rediscovered that 2021 form and then some. And he had a career year, a 17-6 record, led the National League in wins, a 2.7 ERA, a 5.5 WAR, better than 200 strikeouts. He's been super durable, too, since that 2022 injury year. I forget what he even hurt that year. He made 30 starts in 23, 32 starts in 24, 33 starts in 25, 165-plus innings in each of those 3 years. He has been a reliable and productive arm. But last year, he took it to another level, and he became a legitimate Cy Young candidate. He led the NL in wins. He finished 5th in Cy Young voting. But the question with Freddie is, and was, and is, and now we know the resolution, but the question was, okay, coming off of a year now where you were in the running for a Cy Young, do you let him run on the last year of his deal? Do you offer him a new contract, which I'm not sure that even happened or was even talked about among Matt Arnold and Mark Attanasio? Or do you trade him? Do you sell high after this spectacular year and see what you can get on the open market? So he was due $8 million for 2026. That's next year. And obviously they landed on, and they did it this week, that is as good as maybe as we're going to see from Fred. He's 29 years old. He's going to be 30 years old next year. We are not a ballpark, or we are not a team and a market that doles out massive contracts. It is likely, unless he totally implodes on himself in New York next year, it is highly likely he is going to get a much bigger deal, like much, much, much bigger deal after next year. And we're just not going to be able to pay that. So this is the crossroads you always kind of come to with the Brewers, is you have a talented player. He's had really nice production. He's got 1 year left on his deal. What do? Do you roll the dice with him next year, see if you can win a pennant, see if you can make a run to a championship? Or do you sell, get a bunch of prospects, in this case 2 really high-level prospects, replenish the farm system, keep it the number 1 farm system in baseball, and move forward that way? And more often than not, that's where the Brewers land. They did it with Hader. They did it with Burns. They did it with Devin Williams, although I'm not sure people are crying too many tears over that. By the way, Devin's in New York now, too. David Stearns was just going back to what he knew this year, trading for Freddie, signing Devin. They did it with him, and they did it with Freddie now. There are some rare cases in Brewer history where they do go into the final year of a superstar player's contract and they just roll the dice. Can we win a title? They did it with Prince. I think Prince is the most famous example of, you probably could have traded Prince at the end of 2010 for a boatload with the numbers he was putting up, how durable he was at that point, which makes it the end of his career even more stunning, that was what cost him a neck injury, I think ultimately cost him his entire career. But up until then, this was a guy that played 160, and in some cases, I think he played the full boat. I think he played the full 162-game schedule. So you had this guy popping 40-plus home runs, knocking in 100 runs, hit for average, hit 280-plus most years, and was out there and wanted to be out there for most games. He was fine defensively. He was never great defensively, but he's fine. You could have traded him at the end of 2010 and gotten a lot in return from somebody, but they instead decided to go all in. That offseason, they traded for Zach Greinke to add to the rotation, and they try to see if they can win a title with Prince. They don't get it done. They're out in the NLCS. And then we knew Prince was gone. There was no way they were going to pay him his next contract. He got $250 million or $240, whatever he got from Detroit, and he was gone. And they got a compensatory pick back, but that was it. I don't even know if that pick turned into anything. So that's an example. Willy Adames is another example of, he's in the last year of his deal. We could trade him and get more prospects, but let's just see what we do that year. They wrote it out with him in 2024, out in the wild card round against the Mets. You knew you weren't going to re-sign him, signs a massive deal in San Francisco, and all you get back is a compensatory pick. There are also rare examples of the Brewers actually paying a guy a ton of money. The only 2 I can think of in my lifetime, Ryan Braun, they did it once to buy him out of his ARB years. Then they did it again. I think he got about 120 or 130 the next contract. And then, of course, Christian Yelich. They hang on to him, $200+ million deal that he signed in 2020. I think right before the pandemic, and we still have 3 or 4 years or 3 years left on that deal. So there are outliers, but more often than not, this is how the Brewers have chosen to do business as a small market team in a league with no salary cap. So your reaction to the Freddie trade largely depends on how you view a league with no salary cap and how you view how Mark Attanasio and Matt Arnold are navigating their way around that, trying to win, trying to stay competitive, bites at the apple. I know Brewers fans roll their eyes at that. That was the old David Stearns quote. We're not necessarily trying to put together a juggernaut. We're just trying to get in the playoffs, and we figure the more bites of the apple we get, the more playoff appearances we get, at some point, everything will work together. We'll have the right combo of players. We'll have the right combo of luck. You just have to be there, though. If you're not in the playoffs, you have no chance. That has sort of been the philosophy, and that is still the philosophy, it would seem, for the Brewer organization. And in very rare instances, they will go into that last year, play it out, see if you can win a title, and lose that player. And in even rarer instances, they'll actually give that blue-chip player, that big-name player, a big contract. But that was never going to be the case with Freddie, because ultimately, as much as we love Freddie, not just as the pitcher, the production, what year he's coming off of, which I don't know, is that repeatable? I don't know. Is that the best year we're going to see from Freddie? I would say, if I were a betting man, and I am, I would say he's going to regress a little bit. typically in his career, he's been a mid-threes ERA guy with 200 strikeouts, and last year he just kind of locked in and had a 2.7 ERA and was just much better and piled up a ton of wins. I don't know that we're going to see a 17-6 record and a 2.7 ERA and a top 5 Cy Young finish again for him in his career. I hope I'm wrong, as long as it doesn't come at the expense of the Brewers. Freddie's one of those guys I will root for if they're not playing the Brewers, and I will root for his continued success in his career. But if I were a betting man, I would say that last year, 2025, is probably going to be, when you look back at Freddy Peralta's career, that is likely to be the marquee year, the year that is the best, his opus. That's the best of his career, his make with the papa. But that will be the best he has. I could be wrong. He could win 20 games on a Mets team with a big offense, and he could have a 2.9 ERA, and he could finish even higher in the Cy Young. I just don't think that's going to happen. And for the Brewers, when you rarely open the purse strings for $100 million plus contracts, you're not likely to do it for a guy who's going to be 30, who has a lot of miles on the tires, and in this case, innings on his arm, and a guy who has more often than not been a mid-threes, middle-of-the-road, number 2, number 3 kind of pitcher as opposed to an ace. So that was never going to happen. He is likely to get between $120 and $150 million on his next contract. They were never going to pay that. So you're going to get two different reactions. And on the blog, we wrote about it on Thursday. I actually did a choose your own adventure blog. So depending on how you feel about the trade and what the Brewers got back, and maybe more so, again, how you feel about the Brewers are operating as a small market team in the economics of baseball with no cap. Even with that, we gave you two options. Are you just pissed off? Are you just angry? Or are you unhappy but understanding? I think everybody's unhappy. I think both sides of the fan base, those that are unhappy and understanding, those that are just unhappy, nobody's happy to see Freddie go. Of course you would like to see a guy like that stay in Milwaukee his entire career and have a ton of success and win a pennant and get a ring and all that great stuff and get paid here, but that's just not the reality of how baseball works economically. But I don't think either side of the fan base, either side of the choose your own adventure book, you fell off a cliff. I don't know that either side would come out of Thursday happy, saying, oh gosh, I'm so happy we got Freddy Peralta off this team and we got a couple of prospects. We're all sad that Freddie's gone, but there is a segment of the fan base that is just sad and angry that this keeps happening to the best players on the team. And there is the other side of it that are sad to see him go, but understand this is how you have to live as a small market team. This is the best chance they have to get to the playoffs and win division titles and get wild card spots. And maybe, hopefully, at some point, you get that bite of the apple that puts you in a couple of playoff series wins, puts you in the World Series, and you can put it all together and get a ring. But I certainly understand if you're just angry and the frustration of that part of the fan base. I get it, because I am kind of frustrated. You get these guys, they're here for 5 or 6 years, you get attached to them, they're productive, they're a big part of years where you win, like last year, franchise record 97 wins, you win division titles, you get wild card spots, you win a playoff series last year, and you get attached to those players. And after seeing what we saw in the NLCS and seeing the star power the Dodgers have, and knowing that we don't have that kind of star power, but as a fan of this franchise, you kind of feel like, well, if we're ever going to beat a team like that, we at least have to keep the stars we have on our team, right? So that's where the frustration and the anger is coming from. And especially in this last window of 2017 till now, there has been a lot of winning and a lot of, as Marcotte Nazi would say, a lot of summers of fun. Is it my job to win a World Series, or is it my job to give you a summer of fun and memories? Looking forward to another summer of fun and memories in 2026, Mark. But I get it. I get why, you get these handful of star players, you cultivate them, they go through the system, you see them take their ups and downs early and find a groove like Freddie did, and like a lot of those guys did, Corbin, everybody, and they become these all-star players. Freddie, a 2-time all-star, Corbin's case, a Cy Young Award winner, and then you have to trade them to a big market team. And the sentiment of that fan base, that part of the fan base, is that we are the minor league system. Even though we're winning and making the playoffs, we are the minor league system for the bigger market teams. And when you're winning as much as this team has won, this franchise has won over the last 8 or 9 years, and you feel like you're getting closer and closer to a title, to then trade your best players in the offseason or trade one of your best players every offseason, which is what has happened, it feels like, the last 2 or 3 years, it can be a smidge frustrating. So I understand where that part of the fan base is coming from. Ultimately, I think I do land on the unhappy, but I understand why they do it, and we just hope that this formula works out at some point, or maybe there will be a strike in 2027, and there will be a salary cap or some kind of soft cap implemented, and that will give smaller market teams a better, more viable chance to win a title. But this is the system that David Stern's implemented, and they've kind of done this for the run of the Milwaukee franchise, but it seems like the gap between the haves and the have-nots is even bigger now than it ever was. What the Dodgers are doing, people are going to compare them to the evil Empire Yankees of the late 90s, early 2000s. That's on even a different level. I mean, this is on an even upgrade level compared to that. They just threw $240 million at Kyle Tucker like it was nothing, like it was a bodily function. So the gap is getting bigger. But as a small market team right now with no cap, you feel like this is the way you have to do things. So, yes, they sold high on Freddie. They were never going to sign him to his next contract. And it just feels like let's get what we can for him. And that's what they did in the trade. Now, they get back two pretty high-level prospects in Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams. Jet Williams is the number 3 prospect in the Mets system. Sproat is the number 5 prospect in the Mets system. So 2 top 5 prospects. Both are on Baseball of America's top 100. And Jet Williams, I think on the MLB scouting report, or their top 100, he is the 30th highest rated prospect in all of baseball. So Jet Williams he's played shortstop, he's played second base, he's played center field. I don't know how much use we have for another outfielder, but it seems like he profiles as a premier middle infielder. He is 5'7". He is a short king. We love our short kings in Milwaukee. I don't know why that is. Sal Frelick, short king. Caleb Durbin, short king. We got a lot of pocket power on this team. It didn't Pat Murphy start calling Caleb Durbin Mighty Mouse at some point this year? So we love guys at that 5'6", 5'7", 5'8" range. He's 5'7", but he's got some pop. Had 17 home runs between Double and Triple A last year. He profiles as a premier defender wherever you're going to put him. Now, it feels to me like he's knocking on the door of the major leagues. This is not a guy who I don't think is going to be down. If he is at Triple A Nashville for a couple of months, that wouldn't shock me, but I believe we are going to see Jet Williams in a Brewer jersey this year. The question is, where does he play? If he's second short center field, maybe you can use him at any outfield spot. I bet you could. Nobody is unseating Bryce Terang right now at second base. We all understand that. To me, feels like Joey Ortiz might be on the hot seat. Now, they have had it. Pat Murphy's been doing the media rounds here lately, and they have shown a lot of public support for Joey Ortiz. Even though he was dreadful offensively, we know he's a plus defender at shortstop, but you've got to give us something. You got to give us a little something offensively, Joey. And there has been frustration. And then you go back to last year, how many times was Joey Ortiz at the plate with the bases loaded or runners in scoring position with 2 outs, and it just seemed like he could never cash those in. And it's not his fault he ended up in that scenario like 30 times last year, and he had maybe 2 hits in those situations. But you've got to be able to cash in a little bit more. My feeling is the Jet Williams acquisition, although it appears that he is versatile and maybe you could play him a little bit at third base too, my feeling is if you can play short, you can play pretty much any infield position. But this, to me, feels like, okay, Joey, all right, Joseph, we need something from you offensively. And if we're not going to get that, we've got a guy that we can maybe go to. Now, Brandon Sproat, I love the way this guy profiles. He is 6'3", he's tall. He has an upper 90s fastball, sometimes touching 100, not as consistently as Jacob Misiorowski, but he's a ground ball guy, vicious slider, vicious two-seamer. He made his debut last year, had 4 starts for New York, and I think he had a 4.6 ERA or 4.7 ERA. Not bad for a guy getting his first taste of Major League action as a pitcher. The numbers, the height, the size, the velocity, it all profiles as something that's going to fit in perfectly for the Brewers. Now, he might spend a little more time at the minor league level. He's more of a depth piece right now, considering you do have a lot of guys for the rotation, which is another reason you trade Freddie and you feel okay about it. I'm not going to say we feel comfortable about trading a guy who led the league in wins and finished 5th in Cy Young voting, but you do have a lot of guys. Woodruff is back. Matt Arnold talked about that. That did play into the not desire to trade Freddie, but feeling okay about trading Freddie. The fact that Woody is back and he appears to be on target to pitch a normal amount of games this year. But you've got Woodruff, you've got Misiorowski, you've got Priester, who was a revelation last year. He is under team control for 4 more years. You've got Gasser coming back fully now from the Tommy John surgery. You've got Chad Patrick, who was good as a starter, excellent out of the bullpen in the playoffs. You've got Logan Henderson, who was a top prospect, who made a few really nice starts. You've got guys to go to there. And I would say Sprout right now would be the 7th or 8th guy. He's probably going to be the ace or the number 1 or number 2 at AAA to begin the year. But everything about his profile just screams Milwaukee Brewers. And now get him in the pitching lab, which we don't even know what goes on in there. Nobody knows. Nobody's allowed in. Double secret probation. But now get a guy with that type of stuff and then get him in the pitching lab where we have seen like Quinn Priester, guys with career 6 ERAs come out dealing in the low 3s and winning 12 games in a row. get him in the pitching lab. That will only add to it. So they get two very highly rated prospects. Mets Twitter was divided. I always look to the opposing team's Twitter to get a good gauge on whether or not the guys that are coming back, especially as it relates to prospects, whether or not we should be happy about it. Mets Twitter was not super pleased. They acknowledge that a guy like Freddy is a big name to get, but they weren't super happy about the guys they gave up. So that's a good indicator to me, too, that, okay, we're getting two pretty solid guys in return. And now we'll see what Freddie does. We'll also see if Stearns and the Mets are going to give him that next contract. It doesn't feel like they are, because I think that would have been a part of acquiring him almost immediately. You would think they would have given him that contract extension. So this might be just a rental for the Mets for the last year of Peralta's contract, and then he'll get whatever he gets on the open market after that, depending on how he does this year. But I get it. I mean, I'm not happy to see Freddie go, but I understand the schematics right now for this team. And this is just the way you have to do it, and you just hope at one point it's all going to come together and they're going to win the whole damn thing. And I also said, and we talked about it on the air, even if you're upset about Freddie going, you just know this team has a way of finding the guys they need. It seems like Matt Arnold and the hierarchy know exactly who they want to get. It works out almost every time. I said on the air, after Quinn Priester, where everybody second-guessed that because the career numbers were atrocious, and then seeing what he did once they got him in the system, after that, I'm done second-guessing. Unless they have 2 or 3 or 4 really bad swings in a row, I'm not going to second-guess Matt Arnold and the talent evaluators for the Brewers, because it just feels like they identify things and diamonds in the rough, and they know how to polish those up and turn them into not just productive major leaguers, but borderline all-star major league pitchers specifically. So I'm not going to second-guess anything they're doing with the results we've seen so far. But my guess is this team, again, is probably going to win 92 games, and they're going to find a way to get 92, 93, 94 wins, and maybe a division title, and certainly a wild card. They'll be back in October, even without Freddie. But I do understand the frustration of, we're winning all these games, we're packing the park, we're paying $25 for parking, we're paying $16 for a beer. Why can't Mark sign more homegrown guys to long-term extensions? If that's your take, that's your take. I don't know that I have a real good pushback on that, other than this is the way baseball works right now for a small market team, and this is the way that they feel they have their best chance to win a title. But I certainly can't begrudge you if after going and watching 97 wins last year in a run to the NLCS, then they trade an outfielder who was in the Rookie of the Year conversation, Isaac Collins. They trade a starting pitcher who's been here for a long time, who is in the Cy Young conversation. If you want to be mad about that, I think you have every right to be mad about that and call, what does Mark Attanasio, what's the meme say, cheap ass? If you want to call Mark a cheap ass, that's fine. I do think he's earned that too. But I guess I just believe in the philosophy right now for this team, trying to be consistently in the playoffs, replenishing the farm system, and going about it that way. But yeah, they don't hang pennants for number one farm system, do they? I put that in the blog. If that's something you're saying, oh, good, another number one farm system. Can't wait to trade these two guys in 6 years when we can't afford them for more prospects, and then we'll get more prospects for those prospects, and it'll be a never-ending prospect party, and we'll never win a World Series, but we'll always have the number one farm system in baseball, John. If that's your take, I don't know how much I can argue with you. I'm just hopeful that at some point this is going to break their way. But that was really big news this week, and I think that was on Tuesday into Wednesday, trading Peralta and Tobias Myers. Don't sleep on that either. He was a revelation, a guy who, heading into 2024, went 1-14 in the minor leagues. And you talk about the pitching lab, they see a guy who had the worst record in any minor league level. They pick him up for free for a song, picked him up on the side of the road like an old couch, and they reupholster him, and they get him buttoned up and looking nice. And he came out there and went 9-6 in his rookie year with a low 3 ERA. And then he dealt in Game 3 of that wild card series against the Mets. He tossed 5 shutout innings, striking guys out. In a big pressure moment, he was excellent. Now, I don't know what happened last year. It just didn't seem like he had it to begin the year. Then they moved into the bullpen. Then you had all these different pitching options, so he kind of got moved to the side. But then by the end of the year, he was a really solid bullpen piece. I don't know how the Mets intend to use him. He ends up with, I think, a 3.4 ERA for the year, which is not bad at all. A little combo between starting and relieving. But we'll see how the Mets intend to use him. That's not nothing. That's not just a little throw-in on the side. That's a guy who had a really solid rookie year, ups and downs to begin his sophomore year, but ultimately got it together, pitched a tremendous playoff effort his rookie season. So that is not a nothing burger going back to the Mets. So it's Freddy and Myers, and you get Jet Williams and Brandon Sproat back for the Brew Crew. All right, now let's talk about, should we talk about the Packers, and then we'll get into the NFL this weekend? We can end on Giannis. It feels over, guys. I mean, I know we just had the Athletic article. We'll talk. All right, we won't get into it now. We'll do it in a minute or two. But let's just go over the Packers. So Jeff Hafley is on his way to Miami, head coach with the Dolphins. As we talked about on this podcast, I laughed out loud yesterday. So Hafley gets hired, and much like we reacted to it when Hafley was hired as the defensive coordinator in Green Bay, we thought, who the hell is Jeff Hafley? The Boston College head coach? What are we doing? And then remember I said, from the minute he took the mic at his introductory press conference, I immediately thought, oh, okay, this guy's got it. This guy seems like he has it. The exact same timeline played out for Dolphins fans, where they hire him as the head coach. Every Dolphins fan is screaming from the rooftops, who the hell is Jeff Hafley? And he's got a bad haircut. They were really obsessed with that bad haircut. And they didn't like it. They didn't like the move, not a name. And I think the Dolphins still view themselves as a heritage program and the only unbeaten team in all the history they have. Jeff Hafley's going to lead us. And then Hafley had his introductory press conference yesterday, and guess what happened? The exact same thing. Every Dolphin fan on Twitter, oh, I like this guy. All of a sudden his haircut doesn't look so stupid now, does it? It still kind of does. But it was just funny to see the Dolphins fans acting the same way we did when the news came out that he was hired, and then also reacting the exact same way after they watched his introductory press conference. Here's just a little tidbit.
Beliefs, which we're going to instill in this football team, into the players and into this organization. And the first one is trust. And a lot of people use that word lightly. I don't. And I think right now in the world we live in, a lot of people are slow to trust. It might be you. It might be the players. And that's all right, because I'm going to earn it. The next thing.
And the way, the eye contact, the hand gesturing, he just gets that aspect of it. Now, at some point, you have to win games. And there are some Packers fans, and we talked about this, I think, a podcast or two ago, that, yeah, they were a fringe top 5 defense year one. They were fringe top 5 until Micah Parsons got hurt, and then they finished 12th or 13th, and they gave up 25 points in the fourth quarter of a playoff game. So there are some Packer fans that will point to that will say, okay, yeah, he's a great talker. He's good with the media, good with eye contact. How many wins does eye contact get me? Because I'd prefer to have a nervous guy or a guy who doesn't like public speaking but churns out a number 1 defense every year. And I get that. I get that whole perspective. But I knew the initial reaction, and then whenever his press conference would be, which was yesterday, I knew exactly what was going to happen because he's just that good in that kind of a setting. So that was official, and now the Packers have to find a new defensive coordinator. They interviewed Christian Parker, the defensive backs coach in Philly. He actually signed somewhere else, so he's off the table. They asked to interview Durante Jones, the DB coach in Minnesota. I don't know if they actually did that interview. There was some conversation on Packer Twitter that could Brian Flores, the Vikings defensive coordinator, be available. And if you could pay him a ton of money, would he come to Green Bay? Would he hop over to Green Bay? He's going to probably have head coaching opportunities too, but he ends up just staying in Minnesota. I think he did interview for some of the head coaching vacancies, but that was announced yesterday that he's just staying in Minnesota as their DC. Now, the other names that have come in for an interview, Jonathan Gannon, the head coach for the last 2 years for Arizona. He was fired, defensive background. That's what got him that job. And Matt LaFleur, remember when the Packers played Arizona this year? It feels like the last Olympics. I mean, it feels like it's 10 years ago. That was the game Micah had 4 sacks or 3 sacks, just took that game over. But Matt LaFleur was very complimentary both heading into and coming out of that game with Jonathan Gannon. I think there's a good relationship there. He was in to interview. I don't know how I feel about that. I guess I kind of like maybe a guy who was thought good enough to be a head coach. Maybe you bring him back and he rehabs himself as a defensive coordinator again. I don't know. But he was in for an interview. And then the other one that was in for an interview this week, which I do like, I think he has a lot of upside as a rising assistant coach. And it doesn't hurt that he is a Packer Hall of Famer. They had Al Harrison. He played in Green Bay from 2003 to 2010. He was a 2-time Pro Bowler, first team or second team All-Pro in 2007, although we will not talk about what happened to him against Plaxico Burress in the playoffs in 2007. The year he was a second team All-Pro. What did Plaxico have in that game? Like 15 catches for 200 yards? But other than that, he was really very good during his time in Green Bay. He actually does have a ring from the 2010 team. I did not know that. He started that year on the PUP list, and then they activated him and cut him basically on the same day. And he signed somewhere else. But because he was with the team all the way through October, he did get a ring for that 2010 championship team. Now, when you think of Al Harris, you got to play it. Roll that beautiful bean footage. We want the ball, we're going going to score. I like how the official even kind of laughed.
Hasselbeck maybe changing the play at the line. Looks left and right. Takes the snap. Short drop. Quick throw. Left side. Intercepted. Down the right sideline. Going down the right sideline in the end zone. It is Al Harris. Touchdown. Dagger. Al Harris. 56 yards to a game-winning touchdown.
Gosh,
He's changing
what
the
a
play at
moment.
the line. Looks left and right. Takes the snap. Short drop. Quick throw. Left side. Intercepted. Down the right sideline. Going down the right sideline to the end zone. It is Al Harris. Touchdown. Dagger. Al.
Just think, that's what Mrs. McCarron gets to hear.
Looks left and right. Takes the snap.
How was your night,
drop,
Mrs.
quick
McCarron?
throw, left side. Intercepted. Down the right sideline. Going down the right sideline to the end zone.
I want that to be a real-life scenario. I like this. I think in terms of the guys that they have interviewed so far, this would be the guy I would want. He was the DB coach in Dallas from 2020 to 2024. I'm sure because of that, he is very familiar with Trayvon Diggs. I don't know that he's going to stay. They cut him this week. But maybe he comes back on a veteran minimum, and maybe if Al Harris is here, that would encourage him to, or he'd be able to find a way to utilize him better. I'm sure Micah Parsons is familiar with him. They did ask Micah, I don't know if it was on locker room cleanout day or somebody found a way to interview him maybe during the week as this has all kind of happened. And he said his preference is for a guy that's been in it. And we've heard Giannis, we've heard a lot of players say that. They want to play for a guy, and they know that that guy knows exactly what they're going through week to week in terms of the pain, in terms of the nagging injuries, in terms of how much mental toughness goes into game planning and keeping your head in it. They want that kind of a leader. And Al Harris would be that. And I would guess Micah Parsons is familiar with Al Harris because his time crossed over with Harris's time. Now, again, Harris was coaching defensive backs. Mike is a linebacker or an edge rusher, but I'm sure they crossed paths while they were both in Dallas. And then he went to Chicago last year, 1 year in Chicago as the passing game coordinator and the defensive backs coach there, and the Bears led the league in turnovers. Not all of those were picks, but I don't know if that's a coincidence. And I remember in those two games, especially at Soldier Field, they kept cutting to the sideline, and I kept on seeing Al Harris and thought, God, why is Al Harris over there? It feels sacrilegious that Al Harris is over there. But that was the latest name that was in Green Bay interviewing. I like it. I like it for the history. I like it that he's not that far removed from playing, like 10 years removed maybe. I like it that he is a rising assistant. It feels like at some point he's going to get a DC job somewhere. Why not have it be in Green Bay? Now, the other name that's out there that a lot of Wisconsin fans, Wisconsin State fans are going to want is Jimmy Leonhard. And he right now is the passing game coordinator, defensive backs coach in Denver. They are obviously occupied this weekend, so I don't know that he would even have a chance to interview for it until that season is done, which might happen by Sunday. I mean, he may have an interview by Monday morning in Green Bay. But that is a name that we all love. We all loved him for his time playing at Wisconsin. He turned that into a great NFL career, which I don't think any of us saw coming. Kind of felt like he'd be a solid special teams player, something like that, but he turned himself into a high-level safety in the NFL. And then he was the defensive coordinator for the Badgers, some of the best defenses in Badger history. We all know how it went then. Chris gets fired. He takes over. Luke Fickell comes from the clouds and was something that nobody saw coming. Felt like Leonhard was going to get that head coaching job with the Badgers. He doesn't. And then he's kind of kicked around. He was with Brett Bielema in Illinois kind of as an assistant or just some kind of, not mentor, but I don't think he was officially a coach. But he was an advisor at Illinois. And then he's kind of kicked around with a couple of different NFL teams since then. This would be a nice homecoming. Jim Leonhard was a guy who I think before they hired Joe Barry, so this would have been after they fired Mike Pettin, I feel like there was a moment there where it felt like, oh, Jim Leonhard might be coming, and there was a lot of smoke with that. And then nobody really seems to know whether it was Leonhard who took his name out of it or the Packers didn't offer enough. And at that juncture, it felt like the reports I was reading felt like Jim Leonhard felt like he was going to be at some point the head coach at Wisconsin, and that was always his preference, was to be the head coach, the head guy at Wisconsin. And if he felt like that was the direction it was going at some point, that he wanted to stay at Wisconsin and not jump to the NFL and not jump to Green Bay, felt like there were a lot of things happening around that time. But I want to say there was some real interest on each side before they ultimately hired Joe Barry. So this would not be the first time that Jim Leonhard and Matt LaFleur have kind of crossed paths as it relates to trying to find a defensive coordinator. Those would be my top two. Al Harris and Jim Leonhard. Either one of those guys I'd feel good with, but Al Harris was in for an interview, I think, on Wednesday. to take an interview for that defensive coordinator job for Green Bay. By the way, Rich Bisaccia is still employed. And I got to tell you guys, you're not going to like it. You're not going to like this. I think he's staying. Matt LaFleur has the extension. We don't know yet how long it is. We don't know what the money is. Goody's deal is not done. They're not going to talk to the media until all of those are done. They're going to extend Goody. They're going to extend Russ Ball, the money man. When they get all of those done, then I think Ed Policy will do one gigantic press conference with all of those guys, and at that point, everything will be finalized. But Matt LaFleur, it sounds like from behind the scenes, the ink is dry. Whatever the extension is, it's a done deal. And why Rich Bisaccia wouldn't be fired the minute that was done, if you don't do it right away, he's probably staying. And we did get this week John Kuhn, beloved Packer, and somebody we all love, Kuhn, we all love it. We all love screaming Kuhn like psychopaths. And he was doing a radio show. Then he got fired. Now he's back doing a radio show on a different station. But he works for the Packers. He is still some kind of ambassador. He does the preseason coverage. He's a sideline reporter for the preseason coverage. And he tweeted out this week about how much the players love Bisaccia behind the scenes. LaFleur loves Bisaccia behind the scenes. They just think he's a great mentor, good guy to be a part of the football team, good guy to be a part of the franchise. It felt very state media-ish that a guy who works for the Packers, a beloved former Packer who people like listening to on the radio, and that this guy would come out of nowhere and just have this ringing endorsement of Rich Bisaccia. It kind of feels like behind the scenes, maybe Ed Policy went up to Kuhn and said, John, Cooney, can I call you Cooney? People love you, and people do not love Rich Bisaccia. And Matt wants to keep Rich Bisaccia around. So we need to start a PR campaign to spin the feelings and sentiments and shine up Rich Bisaccia a little bit. Can you do that for us, Cooney? Could you get a text or a tweet out there? Could you send a fax? Could you do something to speak highly of Rich Bisaccia? Maybe start to spin things back in the right direction. And Coon said, that's fine, don't call me Cooney. Don't ever call me that again. I'll snap you in half. But it just felt very state media-ish to me that he, out of nowhere, a beloved former Packer who is still very much in the media limelight, would go out of his way to speak glowingly of a guy that basically every Packer fan wants gone at this point. I don't know that there's one person I know in my life that is a Packer fan that is saying, you know what, I think Rich deserves another chance. I think he's saying. But we'll find out a little bit more about that, obviously, whenever the Goody deal is done and the Ball deal is done and they do a giant press conference. I am certain, right? Somebody has to. Should I get a credential? I could get one. Somebody has to ask that question of what is the deal with special teams? Are we moving on? Are we moving in a different direction? I'm much better talking behind people's backs. I much prefer this setting where it's just me in a room like a crazy person as opposed to sitting and looking at Matt LaFleur and seeing those perfectly manicured eyebrows and asking him the tough questions. I just hope somebody else will do it. At some point, there will be a presser, though, and my guess is when they open that for questions, that is going to be a question very quickly about, is Rich Bisaccia staying on? Now, let's talk real quick about the NFL. I'm not making picks this week. We lost both picks last week. We're 43, 39, and 2 on the year. We still have the 2 outstanding Coach of the Year bets. I just can't get a read on these games. Patriots, Broncos, 2 14-3 teams, the 1 seed, the 2 seed. But with Bo Nix out, I don't know. I know we did the spin zone about Jarrett Stidham, and there's been these examples of backup quarterbacks who don't have a lot of history, who came on at the end of the year or came on in the playoffs and led their team to a title. It has happened. Do I think that's going to happen with Jarrett Stidham? I do not, but I don't know enough about him. I don't think anybody does. My guess is if he can keep his nose clean, not turn the ball over, don't fumble it, don't throw picks. If Jarrett Stidham can have a day where he goes 15 of 22 for 180 yards and just doesn't turn the ball over, that's probably all Denver's looking for, and with their defense and the fact that they're at home, you feel like that could keep them in the game. Patriots are also a super young team. Hopefully Mike Vrabel wins Coach of the Year. And they're perfect on the road this year, 8-0, tough place to play. Drake May is top 3 MVP. It looks like Stafford's probably going to win it, but he's number 2 or 3. So he's got that pedigree, but on the road, his first AFC Championship game. At long last, the Patriots' drought is over of 8 years, of 7-ish years. I just don't know. I don't know with a young Patriots team on the road, a backup quarterback for Denver. Patriots are 5-point favorites or 5.5-point favorites. That is a ton for road favorites, but I can't get a read on it. I guess if you put a gun to my head, if you put an exploding tree next to me, just popping that tree. You know what? We played this on the air. When we were talking about exploding trees, this was the media, myself included, acting like we knew what we were talking about when it came to exploding trees this week.
I know for a fact. I'm just guessing also, really.
Just guessing.
I know for a fact. I'm just guessing also, really.
Chat GPT, let me know what an exploding tree is. So if you put an exploding tree next to me and I had one chance to get out of the way, I had to make a pick in this game, I guess I'd say the Patriots are going to win. I would never touch the 5 line. I could see them being a close win. I could see them winning by 4 touchdowns. I don't know. That's the 2 o'clock game. And then again, the 5:30 game also feels like a coin flip. Third time the Rams and Seahawks have faced each other. The two regular season games, ultra close, both less than 3 points. One of them went to overtime. And it's just going to be a nip-and-tuck game, I would think. I've always kind of thought the Seahawks were overvalued, but they seem to be getting better and more dominant as the year has gone on. The way they handled the Niners in that divisional round game, 41-6. I guess I land on, if I had to make a pick here, I guess I land on the Rams only because I take Matt Stafford over Sam Darnold. I will give credit to Sam Darnold. I thought he was going to be cooked once he left Minnesota. It just felt like Kevin O'Connell was the one guy who could rehab a project like that, which he has done for so many veteran quarterbacks. And then once he got away from that soft underbelly, from being under the wing of Kevin O'Connell, it felt like he wasn't going to succeed, but he has. Now, he has turned the ball over a lot more this year than he did last year, and that was always a problem for Sam Darnold. But overall, the numbers are good. I just take Matt Stafford over Sam Darnold. In a win-or-go-home game, when the money's on the table, I am taking Stafford. He's got a ring. He's going to win an MVP. He's a Hall of Famer. He is going to be even higher up on the Hall of Fame list, even more certified if he wins another title. If he gets a second ring and an MVP this year, that only adds to the resume. I just like him better in the battle of quarterbacks, and I like the weapons for LA better, just in terms of the amount that they have. Jackson Smith-Njigba had one of the best years any wide receiver has had in the NFL history for Seattle. But on the other side, you've got Puka Nacua, who is right there with Smith-Njigba, and you've got Devontae Adams, and you've got that tight end, I forget his name, and you've got Kyron Williams. They've got a lot of weapons on that LA side. So if I had to pick, I would say we're headed for a New England-LA, 2 road wins. I would say we're headed for a New England-Los Angeles Super Bowl, but I cannot feel comfortable. I don't even like the over-unders. I'll maybe bet the overs. I'll maybe, just for something, just to have some action on it, I might parlay a couple of overs. The over-under in the AFC title game is 42.5, so a 23-20 game. But again, it's Jarrett Stidham. There's a chance the Broncos don't score. You know what I mean? I mean, that's the thing. Could I see a 23-20 finish? Does that seem reasonable? Sure. If Bo Nix is in there, but Jarrett Stidham might throw 2 picks, and they may score 3 points. And then the over-under in the Rams-Seahawks game is 46.5. We know both of those offenses are explosive. I guess if I had to pick one thing for both these games, I think I'd take the over in the Rams-Seahawks game at 46.5. But I'm not touching it. I might parlay it. Well, that's coming up this weekend, championship weekend. Now let's wrap up on some hoops real quick. The Bucks got absolutely obliterated on Wednesday, as expected, against the reigning champion Thunder. They were down 23-6 before you could blink. Now, the Bucks didn't have Miles Turner or Kevin Porter Jr. I don't think the result is any different from Wednesday, but those are 2 pretty big names to be down. Sounds like Turner is day-to-day with the ankle, but it sounds like the Kevin Porter Jr. oblique injury is back, and it is not good, and he's going to be down for a while, which for a team that really isn't all that good to begin with, that's a pretty big name to be down. A big name on a bad team, I guess. That's a pretty big name to be without for what sounds like it's going to be at least a couple of weeks. The Thunder jumped out on a 23-6 run, and they just kind of laughed their way to a win. Anytime the Bucks got it under 20, it was back to 25 or 30 in a blink. And that is a team that is young and talented and can hit shots, and they won a title last year, and they're probably going to be in the running for a title this year. They're the odds-on favorites right now, and the Bucks just aren't anywhere close to that. So you lose 122-102. They are 18-25 on the year. Giannis sounded frustrated in the postgame again. He only took 11 shots. There are possessions now where he just looks disinterested, and I don't know that I've ever seen that from Giannis. He's always been an effort guy, even when the chips have been down. Effort, going 1,000 miles an hour. I'm noticing more this year, and maybe it's obviously the team or the coaching staff or something. Fire Doc, please God, fire him. Fire him now. Fire him. 5, 4, 3, 2. Do it now. Now, do it now. But it just feels like this is a nightmare season. And now the question is going to become, and I'm still going to go back to the Athletic article from 2 weeks ago where he said he wanted to retire as a Buck and he wants to be here. I guess I'm going to stick with that, even though in the post came on Wednesday, when they asked him about why he only took 11 shots, he basically said, I'm trying to be aggressive. I'm trying to get to the rim. I guess I'm used to being around teammates who understand my gravity. I think that's basically what he said. He's used to being around Middleton in his prime and Holiday in his prime and Brooke on the back half of his prime who knew how to get him the ball and utilize him. And now he's got all these young guys around him, and it seems like there's no scheme on either end. So that wasn't great. Somebody asked him, too, I think after the Monday win against the Hawks, about whether or not he sees himself in Milwaukee at the end of the year, and he just gave one of those, I'm going to take a day-to-day kind of answers. So I guess I'm just going to keep going back to that Athletic article after the loss in Golden State where he said, I want to retire here. I don't want to go anywhere. When I see a wall, I want to run through it, not run away from it or jump over it or whatever. I'm going to stick with that. But now the question is going to become, this season is cooked. Unless they do something big. The deadline is February 5th. There has been a lot of conversation again as to whether or not anybody feels like Giannis could get traded at the deadline. I know there's growing sentiment on Twitter again that he is going to get traded before that February 5th deadline. When is that? Next week? It is not next week, but the week after. So we are 13 days away from the deadline. Thursday, February 5th in the NBA. Boy, what a day. Is that really when the Giannis era is going to come? Is the Giannis era over in 13 days? Because if it is, I need to get to a game. What is the schedule? I haven't been to a game this year yet. If February 5th is truly it, and they trade him, I don't think it's going to happen. I just, like we've talked about, I feel like that's a rush job then. I feel like if you're going to trade a once-in-a-lifetime player who's still in the prime of his career, who's a two-time MVP and a champion in the finals MVP, if you're going to do that, you need to take your damn time. And in the offseason, field offers, find out where the picks are, find out what the order of the draft is, see where the draft lottery breaks. I don't like calling that play at the line of scrimmage, which is what it feels like it would be if they do it at the deadline. So they have a home game tonight against Denver, 8:30, another 8:30. For Wednesday was 8:30 too. It's not bad enough I've got to watch this team disintegrate. I've got to watch it happen until 11 o'clock at night. They've got Dallas at home on Sunday at 6 o'clock. Then they hit the road. Then they have two home games on February 3rd and February 4th, and then the deadline is Thursday, February 5th. So if you want to see him at Fiserv and you think he is going to get traded at the deadline, you've got four chances. Tonight, Sunday, and then not next week, but the week after, Tuesday, Wednesday, February 3rd and 4th with Chicago and New Orleans. I might go to that Wednesday game. I think I got to work. Maybe not. Maybe I'll go to the Tuesday game. Because if we feel like he's going to be gone, I've got to see him in person in a Bucks jersey at least one more time. But there's a lot of that conversation going on again. Like I said, I am sticking with what he said. You said in that Athletic article that he wants to retire here and stay in Milwaukee. Now, the question is going to become, unless they do something dramatic and trade for John Morant like we talked about last podcast, or they trade for Miles Bridges, I've seen that. The Bucks have been connected to basically everybody because they're desperate, and teams know they're desperate to put new parts around Giannis and try to make this thing work on the fly, which is never going to work probably, but whatever, at least they're trying. But if this season is gone, which it feels like it is, and it feels like at best they're going to end up in the play-in tournament, and I don't think they're going to win that, and even if they do, they're going to be out in the first round of the 1-8 matchup. So this season, at best, is probably going to be a 37-38 win year where you're out in the first round. At worst, I could see this team winning 30 games. They are 18-25. They have a difficult schedule. There might only be 12 more wins on the schedule for a team that has Giannis. And then the question is going to become, for Giannis and for the front office, is there a way to get this back on track this offseason? Now, I know it's popular to talk about the fact that they only have the 2031 first-round pick. They have a first-round pick this year. It's a pick swap, though, so they're just not in control of it. The only first-round pick that they are completely in control of, that is not a swap, that can't be taken or moved by somebody else or flipped with somebody else, is the 2031 pick. So at the end of the year, if I'm reading everything right, there is a chance that you would have some cap room. You would have a first-round pick. You've got tradable first rounds. Kuzma's contract would be expiring. You'd have the full mid-level exception. There are things they could do to rework this in the offseason and maybe get a better cast of characters around Giannis. But the question would become, if this year ends the way it looks like it's going to, does Giannis want any part of that? Or is he so miserable this year, and then the idea that next year could maybe still be miserable, is that too much for him still in the prime of his career and he wants out and he wants to win somewhere? I would get it. But that's the question, because he's been driving a Ferrari for, not this year, but for the better part of the last 4 or 5 years, he's been driving a luxury car since 2018, 2019. And now he's driving a beat-up mid-90s Honda Civic. And you have to roll down the window manually, and the heat doesn't work. There's just all kinds of problems with it. So that's what Giannis is driving right now. Now, he remembers, the thing about Giannis that I have faith in is that's where he started. He started in the Honda Civic and loved it. And then, as things got better and he became an MVP and they got these great players around him and he won a title, then he started driving the luxury car. And now we're back to a Honda Civic. And can you go back to that after knowing what you know about the upper crust of the luxury car? And there's a chance that you're not getting right back in the luxury car next year. Maybe you're going to be driving around in a Dodge Dart, maybe in a Challenger or something like that, some mid-level sports car to kind of get yourself back on track. But is he willing to digest that? Is he willing to digest this year, see what they could do in the offseason? And is there any hope it could get better for next year? Or does he want out and he wants to hop to another luxury car? I can't blame him if he does. This team is miserable to watch. So they are on the floor tonight. Denver in town, 8:30 tip time. And real quick, how about the Badgers? I think I was right about the Badgers. They might be good. They have won 5 in a row. They put up 98 points. I get it's at Penn State. I get what the Nittany Lions are in terms of college basketball. Every once in a while, they're okay. But more often than not, they're a dumpster fire. But they scored 98 points. The Badgers were up 50-22 at halftime last night. Offense is clicking. The Boyd-Blackwell backcourt is clicking. Braden Carrington, again off the bench last night, had 16 or 17 points in 16 minutes, hit 4 threes. He's been outstanding as a bench player. And the Badgers, all of a sudden, they are just on the outside looking into the top 25s. They are 14-5, 6-2 in Big Ten play and looking like a tournament team and maybe a top 20 team or a 4 or 5 seed, which is what I said 2 months ago. So the Fire Guard clique has been surprisingly or suspiciously quiet here recently. 5-game winning streak for Bucky. They will host USC at the Kohl Center on Sunday, 3 o'clock tip time. That'll do it for us here on your Friday morning. We'll get back after it on Monday. Thawing out. It's going to be 11 degrees on Monday, everybody. Our degrees go to 11. So we'll get back after Monday. We'll recap championship weekend. We'll recap anything that happens with the Bucks. And as we get closer to the deadline, those rumors are going to get louder and louder and louder again. We'll also be a couple days closer to spring training and pitchers and catchers reporting. We're not that far away. Have a happy, safe, warm weekend. We'll chat with you then.